The soundtrack to Portal 2 is one of my favourite video game soundtracks of all time. One of the things that makes it so good is the multitude of different leitmotifs that run throughout it. For those who don't know what a leitmotif is, it's essentially a short piece of music that represents an idea, character or thing, like how the Imperial March from Star Wars represents Darth Vader and the Empire. Portal 2 has these in abundance, and my mind keeps being blown when I find them popping up in places I never expected. Though there are too many of them to cover in one video, I'd like to talk about some of them here and hopefully try and figure out what some of them mean. Firstly, we have these 5 notes. Or sometimes it's these 6 notes. And sometimes it's slowed down or sped up or soft or distorted or has a big build up and cooldown or is accompanied by flutes. This one is all over the place in lots of different forms with no immediately apparent common thread. This might suggest that it's actually the theme of the whole game, but I think if it were, it would have been more prominent in the trailers and promotional materials. Because of this, I've come to the conclusion that it's the theme of Aperture, its history, its future, and its inner workings. This is supported by how present it is in the old Aperture chambers. It first appears in the menu track 999999, and then as a more chaotic version in the courtesy call. In technical difficulties it's changed a bit with 7 notes in a different instrument, but you can still just about hear it. It's in
You know her?
and also Bots Build Bots. It's quite extended in the latter. It might also be in Don't Do It, but I can't quite tell. Listen to this. Increasingly glitchy and chaotic versions are in all of the tracks in chapters 6 and 7 except Potato's Lament, to symbolise Cave Johnson's and his company's slow descent into evil.
Burn your house down!
The leitmotif then disappears for a while before making a return at the end of the game in Carolyn Deleted. In the 2-player campaign it also appears twice throughout both Robot Waiting Room 1 and You Saved Science. It's the sound I associate with Portal 2 more than any other. Next we have a far more well-known motif, as far as I can tell. If you recognise this, it's probably from the trailer music called Reconstructing More Science. The trailer actually begins with it, and it punctuates some of Portal 2's most pivotal moments, so it's all but confirmed to be the theme of the game. However, it's quite rare in comparison with how the Aperture theme pops up all over the place. It only appears 3 times in the main game. A slower version at the end of the courtesy call, an epic rendition on a different instrument when you go to the moon, and finally in all its unfiltered glory in Carolyn Deleted. Carolyn Deleted is pretty much a recap of the main motifs of Portal 2 at the game's end, so expect to hear more about it. I genuinely have no idea what this motif is supposed to represent. It's prominently featured in both Reconstructing More Science and You Will Be Perfect, which are both trailer music, so I'm going to call it the Portal 2 theme part 2. It's in Ghosts of Ratman, Don't Do It, and
Bombs for throwing at you.
Your Precious Moon opens with it and it can be heard in Carolyn Deleted. I find it completely bizarre. Sometimes it's creepy, sometimes it's dramatic, and sometimes it's just a vibe. This last one is a lot easier to trace. Composer Mike Moraski has confirmed that this is the theme of love, and fittingly it first appears in Love is a Construct. Interestingly, the motif only plays in game when you're close to the companion cube and it sounds like singing. It returns in Hard Sunshine to represent how loving daylight is. The cube singing version is at the start of Carolyn Deleted and throughout Space Phase. Also, it famously appears in Cara Mia Addio. In fact, it pretty much is Cara Mia Addio. There, it shows that the tarts do love you in their own twisted way.
Target acquired. Gotcha.
That's all for now. Credits to the Sound Test podcast for the Mike Moraski comments on the love theme, and to my editor. Now it's over to you. If you know any instances of these leitmotifs that I didn't pick up on, or have any ideas as to alternate meanings of these themes, please feel free to tell me about them in the comments. Bye.